And welcome to another NJThrives Small Business webinar. For those of you who don't know, these are weekly webinars that NJSPDC created to help small business owners like you start, grow, and thrive. I'm your host, Christian Pichardo, NJSPDC Specialty Consultant and CEO at NalumaMedia.com. So at the NJSBDC, we're basically a statewide program. We're powered by the SBA and state partners to help small businesses in New Jersey with three things. We help them with no-cost small business consulting, training and events starting at $0, and exclusive small business resources. So for today's agenda, we're going to go over a couple headlines. Not much has really changed, but second part is going to be the webinar, of course, and then we're going to close out with a Q&A session. But we do encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation. All right, so some of this you may have seen. This first one you have definitely seen. It is the 8A Business Development Program. Basically, businesses that participate, you'll receive training and technical assistance. And also, a little secret here, is you'll be eligible to receive federal contracting preferences and receive the training and technical assistance. But the important part here is that federal contracting preference. So we're dropping the links, by the way, to all these headlines into the chat. So just make sure you take note of those and save them. Next one here is the Small Business Digital Alliance. There's a digital tool library with tons of neat information. Some might even have courses within them. So just another resource that we think might be helpful to you. Next here is the SBA has a lender match. I believe they just call it a program, or is it software? But basically, you get it here on their site. You describe what you need, you get matched, and you're able to talk to lenders. Now, I do want to still let you guys know that the SBA obviously won't tell you what to say to a lender. They can't, because it all depends on you as a business owner. You won't know how to create the proper documentations that you need to actually get approved for a loan. So I encourage you to maybe go through this, find a lender that matches, then talk to the NJSPDC. We're a no-cost service. We also help you match with lenders, but this might expedite the process of finding a lender. And we'll also help you prepare the documents so that you are more likely to get approved. We can't promise approval for anyone, but we'll definitely help you to be more likely to get approved. So there's that. And then the last one here, thought this was an interesting article to see where's New Jersey going, where are they going to allocate the budget for economic recovery. And I noted one of the things in this article, there's a lot of details here, but the main thing that I thought was exciting is that Murphy's press secretary said that the administration is going to be prioritizing small business recovery. So this is good news for everyone on this call as small business owners, and obviously to all of our clients. That they're going to put nearly $800 million into programs that are going to help businesses. So that's good news. There's obviously a lot more stuff, more details as to what particular programs, Main Street Recovery Program, and tons of others. We're going to drop the links again into the chat so you could sort of go through this article for yourself. But yeah. Good news is coming. Good things are coming. And those are our small business headlines for the week. Now, before entering into the webinar, there's two things to keep in mind. Please type your questions into the Q&A box. If it's in the chat, it can get a little mixed up and we might lose your question. But in the Q&A box, we'll know it's there. And also, you're able to ask anonymously if you feel a need to do so. And number two is once this webinar closes out, you'll get redirected to a survey. Once you complete the 3-minute survey, you're going to get access to the resources of this webinar, such as the slideshow and also the recording. And now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome on Tim Peter. He's going to show us how to start your business website in today's world. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing really well, Chris. Thanks so much for having me. Great to see you all today.
Awesome.
So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. I hope you all are having a great day. You should be seeing my slides now. We've got a ton to talk about, so let's go ahead and dive right in. You know, when we talk about making sure our small business gets what it wants and gets where we want to be and the like, we really need to be thinking about a very, very simple formula for how we use digital to drive revenue. And it's really straightforward. It's we get visitors, you know, which is the V, we convert them, that's our conversion rate. So V times CR, we can make sure we get a certain amount of customer lifetime value. We get those folks to come back and do it again. And we add them, you know, we multiply those all together and we get revenue, right? So that's all you have to do. Thanks very much. I'm glad you're all here. Oh, wait, you probably want details on how to do that, right? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the details of how you do this. Now, how you grow your business actually depends on a few things. When we think about this in the real world, here's some rough numbers for you to think about. You know, if you get 1,000 visitors to your web presence and you get a 5% conversion rate and a customer lifetime value of $100, that's top line revenues of $5,000. Now, for your business, you can multiply these by 10, you can multiply these by 100, whatever is the correct number for your reality. But the idea being, this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to drive visitors, you're trying to convert them, you're trying to increase the customer lifetime value, and that's where your revenues come from. Now, you can drive growth lots of ways. First, you can increase your visitors. If we go from 1,000 to 2,000, suddenly our bottom line number is 10 grand, even if the other two items stay the same. If we increase our conversion rate from 5% to 10%, again, our numbers double, even if the visitors and customer lifetime value stay the same. If we double our customer lifetime value and keep the other numbers the same, we double our revenue. And of course, what we try to do is we try to drive all of these. We try to have what's called a force multiplier, where we drive each element higher to actually increase our overall revenues and our overall profitability. And it's dependent, it absolutely depends on us having a really good website if we're going to do all of these. Not necessarily because you're going to sell directly through your website, not necessarily because you're an e-commerce company. I noticed the folks in the chat, lots of you are service providers, right? Customers are going to interact with you in person or with you coming to meet with them. You know, I saw somebody who's a financial planner. I saw somebody who's starting a staffing agency. I saw somebody who's doing photography, somebody who's doing events, right? So you're thinking, well, what's the website all about? Well, the website is the thing that shows your real business. A website is your modern business card. And more importantly than that, it is your 24/7 by 365 salesperson, and it is your 24/7 by 365 customer service person. Doesn't matter what your business is. If you meet somebody and you have a great conversation with them, and then they go and check and see what your website looks like, and it looks like a dog's dinner, or worse, doesn't exist at all, for all practical purposes, you just told them you don't have a business. And so really, we want to think about how do we drive visitors to our website to show we're a real business. We're really here for them. Now, a model that I think about a lot is something called a hub and spoke model, where your website and your email list are the hub. They're the core. They're at the center They're the most important part. And then we have these spokes, our Google business profile or a Facebook page or an Instagram page or a LinkedIn page or Twitter or YouTube or other third-party sites and things that come down the line are spokes. We push content out those spokes and they push traffic back to us. They push customers back to us. So you need both, but you want to remember that your website and your email list are the hub. They are the thing right at the center. Now, a question that I get asked a lot is, why do I need my own website? Why don't I just use, my Google business profile or DoorDash or Uber Eats or Instacart or Facebook? I have a Facebook page or a LinkedIn page. Why aren't those just the thing that I want? Right? Why do I need my own website? Well, there's a very simple reason. The reason is because these folks are all gatekeepers. They're the people who stand between you and your customer. It doesn't mean you don't want to work with them. It does not mean that. But what it means is that they control the gate. There's an old line that says, don't build your brand on rented land. And the reason is because they're toll collectors and they can increase the tolls anytime they want. So one of the reasons you don't want to just rely on those services, it doesn't mean you never use them, but the reason you don't want to rely solely on them is because, we're all New Jerseyans, right? We don't want to have to keep refilling the Easy Pass. We don't want to have to keep throwing in, 35 cents or a buck or whatever it is every time we're going down the parkway. We want to make sure that they're not charging us tolls every single time we want to talk to our customers. Now, if you think this sounds a little paranoid on my behalf, there's an old joke that says it's not paranoia if they're really out to get you. Former Amazon CEO and current space cowboy Jeff Bezos has said, your margin is my opportunity. Think about that. He actually said out loud, your margin, your profits, that's my opportunity to reach into your pocket and take money away from you. Not your sales, not growing revenue, not driving more sales for any of us. No, your profits. That's what Jeff Bezos sees as his opportunity, right? That's crazy. That's crazy. And he's not the only one doing this. Amazon does it, obviously, but so does DoorDash, so does Google, so does Facebook. That's how they stay in business, right? That doesn't make them evil. It just means that that's what their job is to say, how can they make profits off of our profits? So we want to use them to reach customers we cannot reach on our own. But we also want to make sure we understand we have a place for our customers to go that we control. And if you don't think, if you think I'm overstating this, there's a funny quote from Mark Okerstrom, who's the CEO of Expedia. He said, Google is our biggest competitor. The internet has been littered with the bodies of companies put out of business by Google. Oh, wait. I'm sorry, those bodies include Mark Okerstrom because he got fired by the board of Expedia because he didn't have a better plan for how to deal with those intermediaries, those third parties who got between him and his customer. You don't want this to happen to you. So how do you do that? You make sure you have a really successful website. How do you make sure you have a really successful website? Well, there are 4 keys. The first is helpful content, and we're going to talk about this a lot. The next is clear pictures, which really is just another form of content. But again, we want to make sure that that's key as well. We want to have really, really clear calls to action for our customers. And if you don't know what those are, don't worry, you will by the end of this webinar. And we need to make sure we make it fast. We make it work really quickly and easily for our customers. So there is a very simple framework I want you to keep in mind as you think about content, pictures, calls to action, and fast, right? And that is that content is, was, and always shall be the king. Everybody loves Elvis. He's the king, so's content. If content is king, though, there is, of course, got to be a queen somewhere. And we have to remember that customer experience is queen. And I don't know about you, but in my universe, in my empire, The king and the queen are equal, right? They're both critically important because content is a key component of that customer experience. It is the thing that answers those questions for our customers and makes sure that they have a great experience along the way. And if we've got a king, we got a queen, there's got to be some jewelry around here someplace. So content is king, customer experience is queen, data is the crown jewels. And we're going to talk about how you use data to inform your customer experience and inform your content to create that better experience for your customers and drive more revenue to fill that formula of visitors times conversion rate times customer lifetime value equaling revenues for your business. So let's talk about content. Customers need information about your products and services. They spend an enormous amount of time looking for answers to the problems that they have, to the needs that they have. We know that most shopping and buying sessions start with search, and we know that your customers carry the internet in their pocket everywhere they go, right? Everybody's got a phone on them everywhere. Customers need the answers, and you want to be the person who answers that question. Because if you're not, someone who will is just a tap away, just a click away. So we need to make sure our content exists to answer our customer questions. When we think about developing the right website for our business, I don't want you to think about what it looks like to start with. I don't want you to think about what colors it should be or what logo should exist on it or even how you navigate it. Don't start there. Start with what questions do my customers have, and do I have the right information to answer those questions? The core of the website is the content that is on it. It is your 24/7/365 salesperson. It is your 24/7/365 customer service person. Imagine you had somebody who worked for you who every time a customer asked them a question, they went, I don't know. That'd be a problem, right? If you have a store and somebody walked into the store and said, where can I find, a new pair of Air Jordans? And they went, no idea, man. That would be a terrible experience. That would be a terrible answer. You'd want to make sure you were giving the answers to your team so that they could answer customer questions, right? Well, that's what we want our website to do. We want it to answer customer questions, and we want to have content that answers those questions for them. Two of the biggest questions they have are, first, am I going to be satisfied when using your product or service? They're looking to trust you. They're looking for things that define that you are trustworthy. Remember, most people haven't heard of you. They're on your website because they're trying to learn, is this somebody who I want to work with? So this is the first question you have to make sure your content answers. And the second question is, why should I buy from you? And I really appreciate my brother-in-law standing in for this photo. It's a pleasure of him. So we want to make sure that our content conveys trust and answers the questions our customers have. Now, a way to do that is focus on very simple language. Make it very clear, make it very easy. The way I always think about it is snackable, shareable, and sharp. So let's start with sharp. Get to the point. What is the question they're asking, and do we have a clear answer for it, right? The second is snackable. We want to show the content in a way that's easily consumed. Big blocks of text, people tend not to read that. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have lots of information. It means we want to chunk it up with headings. We want to chunk it up with bullet points. We want to make sure it's easy for people to consume, for people to take in, snackable. And ideally, we want to make it shareable too. Something that they want to share with their friends and family and fans and followers on social media. Things that they want to share on Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest or TikTok. We want to make it something that's very simple for them to share and that is emotionally resonant. Why would they care to share it? Okay, so think about that. Now let's take a look at what this looks like in practice. Notice these are two different websites we've got here. And notice that we're looking at short, simple sentences. Most people in America read at about an 8th grade level. So we want to think in terms of writing for 8th graders. You know, explain it like you're explaining it to somebody who's 13 or 14. It doesn't mean that they can't read things that are more complicated than that. It means that they don't want to. They don't have the time. Remember, they're often reading on a very small screen. You want to make it simple for people to understand what they're being told. Make it easy for them to get the information that they need. Think in terms of frequent headings and bullets. Notice headline, bullet, 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 headline. I'm going to show you some examples in a minute from the same thing. This is a really complicated topic, by the way, this one over here on the right. The one on the right, this is an attorney talking about how you plan for an estate, and they've provided a whole checklist. The other thing that you want to do is think about having plenty of high quality images. Demonstrate things, because nothing is more snackable, shareable, and sharp than a really pretty picture. Look for ways to demonstrate your expertise in a friendly way. So this is a real world scenario. This is a landscape designer. Notice how they've broken out their services by various types, often with their own page. So here they have a content about a weekly visits. Here they have about landscape maintenance. This is all under their maintain section. They have a separate section about install, right? But notice organic programs, fine gardening, hand pruning, mulching, bulb planting, right? Lots of details. Seasonal plantings, like these are things I didn't even know existed. I can click on this and get more information, and they have dedicated pages for each of these. The other thing that I think is really neat about this site specifically is they're a service that comes to your home. Note the location right in the heading, South Orange, New Jersey, landscape design. And then they've got content all about the village of South Orange. And they're explaining by the way they wrote the content that they really get the community. They really understand the community. And it also shows where they offer their services. They actually have different pages for different towns where they provide this service. Really, really cool example of a way to do this that demonstrates expertise and does it in a really friendly way and answers questions all along the way. Do you serve South Orange? Yeah, sure do. By the way, if I did a search for, Morristown landscaping or Long Valley landscaping, they would have separate pages for those as well, because again, they're showing where they offer their services. Now, as well as they do it, they do have some opportunities to improve. One thing to note here is the text in their specific case could be higher contrast, or it could be larger. We know that about 1 in 12 men, or 8% of men, are colorblind, and roughly 1 in 200 women, about a little under 4% of the overall population, is colorblind. At smaller font sizes, it can be tough for people to read a font that is close in color to the background. We'd probably want to make this slightly higher contrast. It can also be tough for older customers too, he says, as he adjusts his glasses. There's a great resource here, webaim.org, resources contrast checker. You can check the contrast of the text on the background for your website and see, is that something that people who are colorblind or people who struggle to read are going to have a problem with. The lighter the contrast, the bigger you need the text to be. The smaller the text, the higher the contrast it needs to be readable. So always keep that in mind, right? They do a great job. They just have some opportunities to improve it. Obviously, if content is so important, we should be thinking about it all the time. And we should be thinking about what are we saying at different times during the year. So this is an example, a very rough example from a customer of mine who happens to be a hotel, where we look at winter, spring, summer, fall, and we say, here's different customer types we care about: leisure, leisure group, right? So individual travelers or couples, groups, people who are holding parties, people who are holding weddings, and corporations. And thinking about the specific content that we want to put out in winter for each of these groups, in spring for each of these groups, in summer for each of these groups, with one caveat that I will point out in a moment, and fall for each of these groups with a caveat that I will point out in a moment. Note, there are a couple of blank spots You don't always have to say everything all the time. You want to make sure, though, that as you plan out your content calendar, if there are blanks, are there blanks because we truly don't have anything to say, and that's okay? Or are there blanks because it never occurred to us we should be saying something during that period? That means that's a spot where you want to fill that. You don't always have to say something all the time. You just want to make sure you're doing it on purpose. Okay. The other thing you want to think about with your content calendar is something I call rocks, pebbles, sand. The mistake that I see people make with a content calendar too often is that they think they have to plan out the entire year well in advance, or they have to have every single piece of content planned, months and months and months in advance. You don't. You think about rocks, you think about pebbles, you think about sand. Rocks are your most critical content pieces. They're things that you know are going to happen a year in advance, or maybe even more. You know when your peak periods are. If you're a business that you're busy during Christmas shouldn't come as a surprise to you. Or if you're a wedding planner, we know that people get engaged between Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day, and most weddings are in the summer. Summer shouldn't come as a surprise to you. People getting engaged in the fall at Thanksgiving or at Valentine's Day shouldn't come as a surprise to you. So you should make sure you have that content planned well in advance. The reason we use rocks, pebbles, sand as a metaphor is think of a big jar, right? First, we put the rocks in. Now we've got space in between. The space in between, that's where we start to put pebbles. They're the most important near-term items. Think the things you're going to worry about over the next 60 to 90 days. You don't have to plan them a year in advance. Once you got the big rocks in, we know, okay, here's some stuff we're going to pop in this spot, right? And we start to think about what are those things. You probably want to have those plans 60 to 90 days in advance. And then sand, those are the little spaces in between where you fill in with things that you're going to promote on social or you're going to promote for a short period. And you probably want to have that planned out maybe 30 to 45 days in advance. So every month you should be looking at your content calendar and saying, okay, what do we need to do to be ready for the rocks that are coming up 6 months from now, that are coming up a year from now? Let's start planning the things that we're going to do 2 to 3 months out. And let's make sure we've got some things in queue for the next 30 days or so. So you want to think about rocks, pebbles, sand to plan out your content to answer the questions you're going to get asked at different times of the year, all year long. But it's only something you have to worry about maybe once a month in terms of reviewing your content calendar and making sure you've got all your rocks, pebbles, and sand in place. Now, obviously, when I'm talking about content, I'm mostly talking about the things you say. But if we think about things that people want to see, we also have to remember the power of pictures. We have to remember that images sell. In fact, most simply, pretty pictures sell products online. If we think about the web today, it is an incredibly visual medium, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Pinterest, whether it's TikTok, whether it's YouTube, whether it's video on Facebook. These are all incredibly powerful media that our customers are using. And again, getting the answers that they care about. So use high quality, really clear photos to show the benefits that they receive when they work with your products or services. So again, let's take a look at what it looks like in practice. This is, excuse me for one moment, I'm so sorry. All right, the one on the left here, this is a hair salon in, I beg your pardon, this is a hair salon in Morristown. Notice they're showing the person cutting hair, and we're seeing a lot about the information we get right here. They're telling us something about their brand. Very clear picture. Yes, it's black and white, but they're telling us, hey, we're kind of modern, we're kind of cool. We're showing you the kinds of people we are. Notice they're showing the work being done, or in some cases, you can show the finished product. It's a little tough to see right here, but you'll see the 3 little dots. They have a carousel that scrolls that shows both the work being done and finished product. You can also use video, which can be hugely helpful for complicated topics. This is the same law firm that I was showing before, all about estate planning and how you plan for dealing with things like gifting so that you can save on taxes, or are you responsible for your spouse's death if they die? They're using video to talk through this. It can be hugely, hugely helpful, right? The other thing we want to be aware is that there are going to be people who use your website who struggle with visually. They have visual impairments and the like. We want to use something called alt text for that, where we're putting text underneath the images in our HTML that explains what the image is about so that people can actually understand that if they can't see the image. There's a great link here. There's a great article about it on HubSpot where you can read more about that. I will tell you, it also can help a little bit with your search engine optimization. Alt text does also help sites like Google and Bing understand what your content is about. And so it's a really good idea, A, to take care of your customers who have visual impairments, and also to help Google understand what the content on your site is about. Okay, so be sure to check that out. Now, I've spent most of my time so far talking about content. I mentioned that content is king. Well, let's talk about the fact that we've got a queen too, and customer service is queen. Research shows that customers have higher expectations than they have in the past. They really expect a great experience everywhere they go. And they are far more likely to share positive experiences online, and especially negative experiences online. You know, if you have a great experience, you might tell a friend of yours, or you might tell your spouse, or you might tell your partner, or you might tell one of your parents or somebody along those lines. If you have a bad experience, you're going to tell everybody you meet for the rest of your life. I mentioned this last week. I bought my first new car at Woodfield Chevrolet in Woodfield, Illinois in 1993, and it was a horrible experience. And I'm still telling people about that 30 years later, right? Because that's what people do. We've all had that experience, right? Where we've had that terrible, terrible experience. You tell everybody. We're human beings. It's what we do. So we want to make sure we're giving people great experience. So when they're telling a story about our brand, they're telling a positive story. They are participating in the curation and creation of a positive brand story with us, the business owners. We also know that customers are smarter and better informed. They're carrying the internet with them everywhere they go. They have lots of information. They're going to learn if people are having good experiences or bad experiences. So we want to make sure we're giving them a good experience at every chance we can. Now, the experience they care about the most is getting whatever it is that they need, getting the product that they need, getting the service that they need. And so we want to make it as quick as possible for them to do that. And we call that a conversion. We call that an action. Did they buy something? Did they download a lead magnet? Did they sign up for your emails? Did they schedule an appointment? Any of these is a conversion. And each represents economic value, either real or potential for your business. We want to make it as easy as possible for customers to hand us their money. Have you ever had an experience where you went to a store to buy something and you were ready to check out? You found what you wanted. You know, you were looking for a shirt and you got the shirt and you tried it on and it looked great. And then you went to pay and you stood in line and you stood in line and you stood in line and waited. There is nothing worth you can do to a customer than make them wait to hand you money. I'm going to say this one more time because it's really powerful and really important. There is nothing worse that you can do to a customer than make them wait to hand you money. You've got to get that right first. So we're going to talk about how you do that. Make sure they have a great customer experience. Okay. A way to think about your website is to think about it like a content store. We've all seen stores. You promote to get people to come into the store. You make sure you stock the right products and then you sell it to them. And we tend to think about it in that order. First, you promote, you make sure you got the right products, and then you sell it to them. But when we talk about it in the real world, we actually need to think about it in the other order. You do not send traffic to a site or to a store that doesn't have products people want to buy. And you don't stock products until you actually make sure you can sell them. So we start by selling. Make sure you've got working cash registers. And I'm going to give you examples of what I mean by cash registers. It doesn't just mean an online shopping cart. Most of the folks who are here on this webinar are not selling things where people put things in a cart and give you their credit card, but they do need a way to connect with you. They do need a way to convert, whether it's call your phone number, whether it's drop you an email, whether it's fill out a form. Those are all conversions too. Those have to work first. You have to make your content findable to get people to the information they need to drive conversions. Because if you don't convert and you spend money on marketing or spend money on advertising to drive traffic to your website and it doesn't convert, you've wasted your money. Customer experience must drive customers to convert. Then you can work on improving your content to say, okay, we're finding this content works really well, this content doesn't, we're going to fix this. But make sure it's the content that customers want and that it's the content that drives sales. And then when you know it works, then just start pumping money into it to actually, if we know every time somebody buys from us, whatever that means in your world, we want to make sure that we're giving them we're spending money to get them there. Okay, but that becomes easy. If every time I make a sale, I make $100, spending $10 to make that $100 is actually pretty easy. If I don't know that I'm going to get the $100 at the end of it, spending the $10 to drive traffic to it is a really bad idea. Okay, so how do you get people to convert? Well, you need a clear call to action. A call to action is, what do you want them to do? Ask for the sale. Tell them what you want them to do. We have to think in terms of asking. Give them a benefit. Give them a second benefit. Tell them why they benefit. Tell them why they benefit again, and then hit them with a call to action. This example we see is a shopping cart. People can actually buy. They can add it to their cart. And I like this. Normally, I would tell people just have one button, but the reason I like this one is they've done two things here, but both make sense. One is put it in your cart, and one is buy with PayPal. If you are selling things online, this is something that has been proved again and again and again, which is the more different payment options you offer, the more people are likely to buy from you. Okay, because not everybody has the credit card, not everybody has PayPal, not everybody has Venmo, not everybody has Klarna, right? Not everybody has Zelle. So the more ways you make it available for people to buy from you, the more likely they are to buy from you, right? So this time having two does make sense because they're saying you can just add it to your cart and finish the transaction that way, or you can buy with PayPal right now. That's a way to do it. You can also have scheduling forms. You might have a business like a dentist's office or an attorney or a restaurant where we want people to schedule their appointment, and we want them to schedule their visit without having to pick up the phone. Very simple, very straightforward. This is a different type of conversion, and it's more appropriate to some businesses than others. Another conversion you might want is get people to sign up for your email list. But what you want to do is give them a reason to. Now, in this specific case, this is a camera store in Westwood. They're saying, hey, subscribe to our newsletter and we'll give you a $10 coupon the first time you come in, right? They're saying, we want your email address so that we can actually email you and tell you about things we have going on and share our content with you as we create it. But they're giving the customer something of value to share that email address. Now, I'm going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt that they've thought through what is their average sale, right? I'm assuming that their average sale is more than $10. So giving a $10 coupon probably makes sense for them. You would want to play with that to make sure you understand, okay, if I'm giving a coupon, am I going to get that back on the back end? Right? Okay. Now, there are 5 critical attributes of an effective call to action you want to think about. The first of these is size. Don't Make the thing you want people to do small. There's there's actually science behind this. There's somebody who got their PhD, person by the name of Fit, Dr. Fit, the late Dr. Fit, as it happens. And Dr. Fit did research and proved mathematically, and I don't mean to malign Dr. Fit because this is actually super important, but it's possibly the dumbest PhD anybody has ever been given in history, which is that they proved mathematically that things on a screen that are bigger are easier to click on than things that are smaller. I know, right? Shocking. Something bigger is easier to click on than something that's smaller. But how many times have you seen a website where, you know, everything you want the person to do is exactly the same size, or it's really small and hard to click on? If you really want somebody to do something, make it the biggest thing on the page. If you want them to take a secondary action, make that a little smaller. So it's very clear visually, this is the thing I want you to do. This thing is the thing that you can do. We see it right here. Add to cart, buy with PayPal, more payment options, right? They've got a secondary call to action, but it's smaller. Add to wish list, it's smaller. So size. Placement. Is it something that's easily visible before somebody has to scroll? Is it very clear? Don't be afraid to have something both above the fold and below the fold so it appears more than once on the page. Think about the verbiage you use. Is it add to cart? Is it buy now? Is it learn more? Is it act now? Notice buy now, act now. We're creating urgency in there. We're testing the verbiage to see if it can actually drive sales. So think about what you're actually asking the customer to do. We want to think about the style. Is it a button? Is it a link? Is it a link somewhere within the text? Different versions of these work for different types of businesses. I will tell you, buttons tend to work better, but you might need to test for your specific business to see maybe a link in the text is actually a little more effective. Those are things you can try to see if we can get people to do different actions that we want them to do. And last but not least is color. I'll tell you a funny story about this. I worked for a very large hotel company. Our colors were black and silver. We were a luxury brand, right? Black and silver were a big part of what we did. We ran a whole bunch of email marketing with silver buttons with black text. And we've discovered very few people were clicking on the button. We couldn't figure out for the life of us what was going wrong there. So we did some user testing. We brought some users into a lab and we watched them open the email and interact with the email, and nobody was clicking the button. And we said, why aren't you clicking the button? And they said, well, it's grayed out. We knew our brand. What we thought was silver, they saw as gray. And as everybody knows on the screen, a grayed out button means it can't be clicked. We changed the button to orange. Our sales skyrocketed. It was a silly thing. Sometimes we get so narrow because we know what we mean that it's not clear to us why the customer is struggling. So you always have to look at those kinds of things. And color is one of them. I want to remind what I mentioned before. 1 in 12 men, about 8% of men, are colorblind. So be aware some colors won't work. Or if you put, green text on a red button or red text on a green button, that is a form of color blindness. That might not be visible to people that's a problem. Or a red button on a green background, right? If you're doing a Christmas sale, for instance. So be aware of color from that perspective. Now, I've mentioned content is king. I've talked about customer experience as queen. Let's talk about data being the crown jewels. We have lots of data available to us, and we want to use this data to understand our customer needs and make sure we're making things better along the way. So take a look at your pages that get traffic volumes and conversion rate. If you've got a lot of traffic but no conversions, then we want to work on improving our calls to action, improving our content, encouraging people to actually buy from us. Those are opportunities to say, okay, we want to drive more conversion from places we already get traffic. If we get lots of conversions but very little traffic to them, those are places we want to test new traffic drivers. We want to increase our marketing, spend more money to drive people there, or improve our SEO. If we get lots of traffic and lots of conversions, those are our all-stars. We want to promote those heavily and lean into them. And if we have pages where we got very little traffic and very little conversion, those are sick dogs. Those, we might send upstate to live with grandma, right? Or we have to really fix the thing overall. But pay attention to your data, and we're going to have a webinar in just a couple of weeks where we look at analytics so you can measure this more effectively. But you want to look at the data to say, which are our stars and where do we need to test on improving conversion and where do we need to test to improve traffic, okay? The other thing we want to pay attention to is what are people searching for? Our customers and Google looks for content that answers their questions. They want the one true page that actually answers the question that they have. We can see this lots of places. We can see the target keywords that customers search for. If we think about where people are looking, they'll tell us what matters to them. You can use Google Trends and Google Search Console to measure keyword volumes and review the keywords that people are actually clicking on when they're looking for you. What you also want to do is say, okay, if I'm getting a lot of impressions, people are searching for this a lot, but they're not clicking through to my website, that's a place where you've got to flesh out content. That's a place where you've got to think about, do we have the right answers for them? Now, I mentioned Google Trends, Google Search Console are one place you can do this. There are plenty of other keyword research tools that vary in cost from very inexpensive to fairly expensive, but there are links to all of them here for you so that you can check them out for your business. The last thing I want to leave you with, the last thing I want to mention is, of course, customers are busy people. They have a lot going on in their lives, right? Most of your customers are doing the things that they're doing in between living their lives. They're picking up their kids from the pool or from soccer practice. They're, driving to work if they're actually having to get to work instead of, working from home. They're in between meetings if they are working from home. They need to be able to do this quickly. Mark Benioff, who's the CEO of Salesforce.com, has said speed is the new currency of business. It's the thing that shows you care about them. It's the thing that shows that you're actually putting their needs first from a customer experience perspective. The way I like to say it is instant gratification isn't fast enough. We want to make sure that our website is very fast. We want to make sure we're investing in a site that actually performs quickly. I don't just mean the experience, I mean it actually loads quickly, right? Even if people are on 5G, they don't want to wait for your page to load. We want to make sure that we get the content in front of them as quickly as possible, that we get them to the conversion action that they want to take as quickly as possible, and then we let them get on with their day. Again, don't make them stand in line to hand you money. Make it easy for them to do so. Now, some of the folks on this webinar may not have a website. I don't want to do a commercial for anybody, but I'll tell you there are a couple of sites that I like. One is WordPress.com. It's a great all-around website builder. It's better if you don't require an online shopping cart. So you're a landscaper, you're a wedding planner or an events planner. You've got something where you have people just reading about your services and then they're going to pick up the phone and call you, or they're going to fill out a form. WordPress.com, great option. It's relatively low cost. It's relatively simple to set up. And there's lots and lots of developers out there who are very familiar with it. So if you need help, which you might, and I strongly recommend people get help where they need it, you can find people who are actually skilled in WordPress to actually build out your site and get it to do the things you need it to do. If you do require an online shopping cart, something like Shopify.com is another very good option. It is also relatively low cost. It is also relatively simple to set up. And much like WordPress, it's got a really well-established community, a really established platform, and you can find resources who can help you make the website work more effectively for you. So with that, what I'd like to do now is open it up to questions. What questions can I answer for folks?
All right, let's go ahead and get some questions, and people, please submit them into the Q&A box. I have a question from Vicky. Asks, how do I make a service a must buy?
Sure. So first of all, I should have said this in the beginning. I'm a small business owner, right? I have my own business. I am a service provider. This is what I do for a living. And what you have to do is you have to make sure your customers understand, why should I buy from you? And am I going to be satisfied? Be very clear on what the benefits are of the service that you offer, right? There's an old joke that says people don't want to buy a drill, they want to buy a hole, right? So, you know, the biggest mistake I made when I started my business, I'm a consultant by day, right? That's my day job. And the biggest mistake that I made was people would ask me, well, what can you do for me? And my answer was, oh, lots of things, right? Which is a terrible answer, because nobody wants to buy lots of things. Somebody has a problem that they need solved. They have something where they need an answer. So what I did was I started packaging up my services that we do an audit for you of your digital experience. We do an audit of your website. We do an audit of your marketing. And people said, oh, I can buy an audit. I get what that is. So be very clear about what you're offering and what the benefits are of what you're offering, and make sure your content and your imagery actually explain that to folks, and then give them a clear call to action of what you want them to do. Do you want them to call you? Do you want them to email you? Do you want them to fill in a form? But make it very clear. This is what we do. This is how long it takes. This is how you benefit. Contact me now. That's how you do that.
Awesome. Next question here I have from Gary. Says, can't copy the chat content in Zoom. So Gary, that is not disabled. You should be able to copy any content in the chat. If anyone else is having those issues, let me know. Question from Lashana asks, what about GoDaddy? That's what I use.
Oh yeah, sure. GoDaddy is great. GoDaddy offers two different ways to set up a website, or at least they used to. It's been a while since I've logged into GoDaddy for this, but last I knew they offered two different ways. One is their own website builder, and one is you can set up a WordPress site on GoDaddy. So I would suggest you do the latter of those. Use WordPress on GoDaddy, but it's a couple of clicks and the website will be up and running. But it has all the benefits of WordPress. It just happens to be hosted on GoDaddy. Perfectly fine solution for how to build a website.
Awesome. Kate asks, what's your opinion on Squarespace?
Squarespace is also very good. Squarespace is a little easier in terms of setting up than WordPress is, actually. It's really, really good for folks who are like photographers, or folks who have, you know, a portfolio of art and things like that they want to show. It's a little less flexible as you grow, but I want to be very clear about this. You can do this. It can be more expensive. So as your business grows, it can work out just fine as long as you can cover the cost of it. It's a perfectly fine tool, a perfectly fine site. You know, I don't have any negative opinion of it at all. Just be aware that if you fall into that middle zone where you're too big for its default settings, but not big enough to afford more customization, you can fall into this tough area where it can be a little limited or a little expensive until you cross that next threshold, right? So in early stages, it's great. In later stages, it's great. In the middle, it can get a little dodgy. Either you can't do what you want to do fully, or it's going to cost you more than you'd like it to. But it's a really good platform. It's a really good tool.
Awesome. Tiffany asks, any suggestions for marketing a staffing agency via website? Do you think it would require a brick and mortar?
I don't think it would require a brick and mortar. I think one of the things we've learned over the last year is people are working remotely just fine. So I don't think you need a physical space. What you are going to need to do is make it look very professional. One of the things I didn't talk about this in here, but when we talk about content and when we talk about customer experience, we need to think about who are we selling to. Your customer as a staffing provider is going to be a business person. You're selling B2B, not B2C. So their biggest concern is, am I going to get fired if I hire the wrong company to do this service for me, right? That's actually what they mean, am I going to be satisfied, is, am I going to keep my job if I hire the wrong firm for this? So you want to make sure yours looks very professional, very real, make sure. Remember, you're not selling to a single person. You have to answer the questions of the hiring manager. You have to answer the questions of the person who signs off financially on this. You have to answer the questions of, probably those people's bosses. So think in terms of, there's two basic characteristics you have to answer. One is a specialist, who's going to ask questions like, how does it work? And one is the business decision maker who's going to say questions like, what does this do for my business? So think in terms of, who am I selling to? Make sure you've got content targeted at each of them and make it easy for them to get the questions answered that they need to answer. But think first and foremost about which customer am I addressing with that content.
Awesome. I have a question from Michael. He asks, as a financial specialist, I have compliance issues when it comes to providers' products. Do I concentrate on self-promo instead? How would you suggest I do this?
Okay, so first, I have to say, I'm obligated to say, this is not legal advice. You are in a highly regulated industry, so obviously, first and foremost, make sure you are following the guidelines that the competent and qualified legal authority is giving, or your legal advisor is giving you on this. What I can say is, you're selling trust. So yes, you should be promoting, why are you trustworthy? What are your credentials? What do you bring to the table? Why should somebody choose you over some other financial service provider, in terms of the person who's helping them put together their plan or things like that? How do you help people cope with whatever financial questions that they have? And then, make sure you've got really good content that answers questions. I would point to that law website that I showed in the example. They're doing lots of videos that show, hey, I'm really, a trustworthy and competent attorney. They're answering legal questions and also being clear that this is not legal advice for your specific circumstances, but here's the kinds of things you want to keep in mind. So yes, you should think about how you promote you, but it's how you promote you to engender trust in the customer you're talking to. Okay.
Awesome. So we do have some questions left here, but we are reaching to the end of the webinar, unfortunately. But I advise everyone, send in your questions to us. And yeah, I'll go ahead and let you close out, Tim.
Perfect. So as a reminder, I just want to remind you, your website and email list are the hub. Think hub and spoke. This is the hub. Remember our key framework of the king, the queen, and the crown jewels. Content is king, customer experience is queen, and data is the crown jewels. Remember, you're trying to answer two core questions for your customers. Am I going to be satisfied when using your product or service? And why should I buy from you? Remember to keep your content simple, snackable, shareable, sharp. That there is no more snackable, shareable, and sharp content than pretty pictures. Use them well. Think in terms of our content store. We make sure we sell the products first. The cash register works. We make sure that we're stocking the right products, and then, and only then, do we promote. That speed is the new currency of business, that we're trying to help people do what they need to do as quickly as possible so that they can get on with their very busy lives. And if you do all of that correctly, the digital revenue formula is going to work out really well for you, that you're going to see lots and lots of revenue in the end. With that, I want to thank you all very much for your time, your attention, and your wonderful, wonderful questions. I do wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar.
Awesome. As always, thank you, Tim. And for everyone else still here, next week, we have Tim coming back again, and he's going to show us how to sell and connect with customers online. So to register for that event, go ahead and scan the QR code that you see on your screen. I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. And also, by the way, for those who could not copy or save the chat, remember that the survey that we send out, after that survey, you'll get access to the actual slideshow. So you'll be able to get into the slideshow and copy any links that you would like. All right. Hope you guys got to scan that. And remember, we're the NJSPDC. We've helped 15,000 plus small businesses grow. We have no cost small business consulting, training, and events starting at $0. Exclusive small business resources. To get started with us, go ahead to njsbdc.com/request-counseling. I'll go ahead and leave this QR code up for a minute. You're going to get all the links that lead to our website, social medias, how to request counseling, what have you. But I'll see everyone next week. Bye, everyone.